The streets of Manila were alive with movement, jeepneys honking, vendors calling out their prices, and the endless footsteps of people rushing through their day. Amid the chaos sat a thin barefoot boy named Arnel, a child far too young to carry the weight of struggle so heavily on his shoulders. His guitar, worn and cracked, rested against him like a trusted companion. Its strings were uneven, its body scarred, yet when Arnel's small fingers strummed, a melody cut through the noise, soft but powerful, fragile yet unbreakable. Passers-by glanced at him briefly, some dropping a coin or two into the dented tin beside him, but most moved on without stopping. For many, he was just another boy on the street, blending into the daily blur of poverty and survival. Yet inside Arnel lived something no one could see at first glance, a fire, a dream that refused to be extinguished. Each song he sang was more than music, it was a plea to be heard, to be seen, to matter. Despite hunger gnawing at his belly and the sting of indifference from strangers, he sang with his whole heart. He imagined a future where he stood not on a noisy street corner but on a stage, lights shining down, people listening not with pity but with awe. In those moments of song, Arnel was no longer just a poor boy trying to survive, he was an artist, a dreamer, and a believer in a destiny far larger than the life he was born into. The morning of the audition felt unreal, like a dream Arnel was afraid to wake from. He had been discovered by chance, a stranger who stopped in the busy street had been captivated by his voice and connected him with a talent show audition. Now, standing outside the grand venue, Arnel clutched his old guitar tightly against his chest. His bare feet shuffled nervously on the polished floor, so different from the rough pavements he was used to. The building itself was enormous, filled with lights, cameras, and people who seemed to belong to another world. When his name was finally called, Arnel's heart pounded like a drum. He walked slowly onto the stage, blinking against the blinding spotlights that made the audience invisible beyond their glow. The judges sat in front of him, larger than life, their expressions curious but unreadable. He felt small, just a boy with a battered guitar, standing before people who had seen countless hopefuls come and go. For a moment, doubt consumed him. His hands trembled as he adjusted the guitar strap, his throat dry. He remembered nights when no one had listened, when even his music felt lost in the noise of Manila's streets. But then, a thought steadied him. This was his one chance to be heard, to sing not just for coins, but for his future. Taking a deep breath, Arnel closed his eyes, let his fingers find the strings, and prepared to release the song that lived inside his soul. The first strum of Arnel's guitar echoed through the vast hall, fragile but clear, like a whisper daring to be heard. Then his voice followed, low and shaky at first, carrying the opening lines of Hotel California. A hush fell over the audience, the restless murmurs replaced by an almost reverent silence. People leaned forward in their seats, caught off guard by the sound of a boy who looked so small, yet carried something so immense within him. As the song built, so did Arnel's confidence. His voice grew stronger, warmer, filled with a haunting beauty that carried both sorrow and hope. It wasn't just the lyrics that moved people, it was the truth behind them. Each note held the weight of nights spent hungry, of days spent ignored, and of dreams too fragile to share aloud. The judges, who had expected little from the barefoot boy with a battered guitar, now exchanged wide-eyed glances. One reached for a tissue, another leaned forward, visibly shaken. By the time Arnel reached the chorus, the hall was transformed. Audience members clutched their chests, some wiping tears as his voice soared higher than anyone thought possible. The boy who once sang on crowded Manila streets for spare change now held an entire theater in the palm of his hand. With every chord, every word, Arnel wasn't just performing a song, he was telling his story, and for the first time, the world was truly listening. When the final note of Hotel California faded into silence, Arnel stood frozen, his chest rising and falling with the effort of pouring out his soul. For a brief second, the hall remained completely still, and he feared he had failed. Then, like a wave crashing against the shore, the audience erupted. Thunderous applause filled the room, people rose to their feet, and cheers echoed against the walls. Arnel blinked in disbelief, gripping his guitar tighter, unsure if it was real. The judges were no longer composed. One wiped away tears, another shook their head in awe, and the third leaned forward, their voice breaking as they said, this is what music is meant to do. Arnell's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst, but nothing could have prepared him for what came next. A judge slammed the golden buzzer with a trembling hand. In an instant, golden confetti burst from above, raining down in a dazzling storm of light. The audience roared even louder, the moment burning itself into history. Arnell dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down his face, but they were not tears of sadness, they were the release of years of pain, of nights wondering if he mattered, of days when his voice was ignored on the streets. Now, under a rain of gold, he wasn't just another poor boy with a guitar. He was a star, a dreamer whose voice had finally been heard by the world. Backstage, Arnell could hardly breathe as he wiped golden confetti from his face, his small hands still trembling from the rush of the moment. His mother, who had been watching with tears in her eyes, rushed to him and pulled him into the tightest embrace. She whispered, her voice breaking, "Anak, you've made it, you've shown them who you are." For years, she had watched him sing on busy Manila streets, invisible to most, but she had always known his voice carried something extraordinary. Now, the world knew it too. The judges soon appeared behind the curtain, their eyes still red from crying. One knelt down in front of Arnell, smiling warmly, and said, "You didn't just sing a song, you gave us your heart. That's why the world will remember you." Another placed a hand on his shoulder, promising that this was just the beginning, that his life was about to change forever. For the first time, Arnell believed it. He looked around at the bright lights, the cameras, the cheering audience beyond the curtain, and most of all, his mother's proud smile. The boy who once sang for spare coins in the streets of Manila now carried hope not just for himself, but for countless others who had ever felt unseen. That night, as his story spread across the globe, people were reminded of something powerful: from the humblest beginnings can rise a voice strong enough to move the world.